Hey guys, Infidel 1258 here. Tonight I want to share with you a clip from a recent live event with my members only. If you want to be part of these conversations, you have to join the member page on the community tab of my YouTube channel and pick your favorite tier and get involved. Now, we're going to talk in this video about whether or not I'm happy with my investment in Splinterlands cards, if I want to move into SPS because I like that more, because I do think SPS is the single, if I could only invest in one thing in this game, it would be SPS. So in this video, we're going to talk about, well, then why don't I sell everything, including some of my best cards. Specifically Kitty, because it's on my mind. Should I sell a Kitty legendary summoner card, move that into SPS, move that into other cards? There's so many amazing opportunities. Let's talk about it in this video. If that sounds interesting, stick around and stay tuned. Have an amazing day. God bless. So you're saying that you're comfortable with your current assets and you're optimistic about SPS, but not so optimistic that you're willing to let go of other assets to reinvest in SPS. That's true. That's true in part, but I would also say that the thing about, to answer your question specifically around, like for instance, you're asking, why don't I sell other assets if I'm so confident? Because you're saying you're comfortable with you are comfortable with SPS, but not so optimistic that you're willing to let go of other assets to reinvest in SPS. It's more like, I've reached a place in my investment plan within Splinterlands that I have acquired certain assets that I like, that I'm able to enjoy, that are almost not really an investment anymore. Like a good amount of my main deck. I don't know, maybe not. Maybe I would sell some of my main deck. Maybe I would even, for instance, sell a Kitty. And I keep thinking that lately. I'm like, Jim, maybe we should talk about this for a few minutes.
Over there.
What's that, bud?
I was saying, you keep bringing up selling that Kitty every now and again.
Yeah. It's a big ticket item. It's one of those, like I said, like it's appreciated a lot, and I could maybe convince myself that even though I would totally miss it, maybe I could reinvest in other assets that would provide some degree of buffering for that loss and allow me to retain some extra, maybe cash in hand, or to buy more SPS or something like that.
Yeah.
Just the other.
It is a lot of SPS.
And so I want to finish my thought for I think it was Alec there. The idea is not exactly that it's kind of like there's some assets that I don't even really think of as an investment anymore. And that's a good amount, maybe not all, but it's a good amount of my main deck, which is 2 million power. There's probably 500,000 power in there that I would be willing to let go if the right price came. And in fact, there's probably about 500,000 power in there that I specifically bought, now that I think about it, that are almost entirely investment. Like I've got probably 1,500 BCX of Helicore Mercenary and that kind of thing. So eventually there will be I'll sell some of that stuff, but at least 1.5 million of it is actually things that I probably wouldn't let go. And so it's the question, your question kind of makes me need to unpack, like, what would I get rid of? And if I was to go through my deck, this is 1.9 million power, but that's actually because I'm renting a bunch of it. I think I have closer to 2.4 or 2.5 on here, but there's a ton of cards that I would have. What would I sell that would really move the needle? Like, you know what I mean? It would be such a nuisance to go through and sell this one card for, I wouldn't have, it says it's worth 379. I'd have to sell it for 325 to make it sell quickly. And then I'd have to, maybe it would sell and maybe it wouldn't. And maybe I'd get into a bidding battle with some bot or something. And I'd have to do that for 1,000 different cards. It's so labor intensive that at this point, this is just a collection of cards that I'm going to enjoy playing for the rest of my life, with a few exceptions. But then along comes Kitty, Jim, and it's like, well, maybe I could justify it for a few $1,000s worth of profit. And that's where it starts to actually be an interesting conversation to me, Alec and Jim.
I I can just think about it, right? The first game after you sell it, you're like, I would have won that game if I had Kitty. I would have won it.
I think you're right. You are probably right.
Like you would hate it so much that you got rid of it. But you also, like you talk about reallocating
Yeah.
value
Yeah.
so much.
This is what I noticed here too,
It's
Jim.
hard.
Look at this. 350 high bid, 410 low
Yeah.
bid for the kitty. So maybe I could sell it for 3,500, 4 grand, something like that. And then
Yeah.
over here, look at little mimosa over here with the low bid, $99. And the other day, let's see, like look at this, $1,000 for a mimosa. I mean, this card is not as good as kitty. I'm not saying it is. It's like objectively worse, but it's not bad. It's actually a pretty strong card.
It's a different card.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
it's not trying to compete with Kitty. It's trying to fulfill a different role.
In some sense, it's trying to fill. My complaint with it is that it's trying to fill 3 roles. Affliction is almost a counter to, well, like it's an attempt to be a counter to Kitty, I think. The archery reduction is like an attempt to counter Yoden a little bit. And then the void is like an attempt to counter like what, magic teams, I guess. So
Yeah.
it doesn't feel focused. And so I've never loved it. And I don't now love it. But at sometimes I do definitely lose to this card. Do you face it very often, Jim?
Yeah, I completely understand with what you're saying, but I'm looking at her more of if you have like a tank that has shielding, right?
Yeah,
A lot of the time they are now very weak to magic,
I agree.
right? Because they have no other way of protecting themselves other than their HP pool.
I agree.
And so her giving him that now makes it to where you have the omni tank resistances.
Yeah.
You have the resistance to the magic, melee, and range now as well.
Yeah.
Along with, if we think about like what can really shut down a resistance tank is the sustainability of the heals.
Yeah.
Now she is now inflicting she is now putting the affliction on the enemy, stopping those heals as well.
Yeah. No, I definitely agree, and those are the 2 thoughts that would let me say to myself, even though this is a superior card, if the things you just described, and picturing specifically Harklaw, who I increasingly have a fond appreciation for.
So much.
And then you'd throw Void on that guy. And like you said, one of the drawbacks sometimes of like some of these tanks, like for instance, Harklaw again, he's not going to do a ton of damage. He is more of I think he does 3 damage at the highest levels. So with dropping Affliction on your opponent can really, again, tilt the scales for you. So I think Mimosa is quite strong, so it's like maybe I could make that. And then I was even looking yesterday and looking at like, okay, look at Deep Swimmer too. You can get a maxed out copy for 900, and so it's like, well, what if I traded, like, picture yourself. You were just talking sports a few minutes ago, Jim. Like your favorite hockey team, they've got like the best player in the league, and then they trade them for 2 very strong first line players. Like these are not comparable to Kitty, but I'd say they're both good. They're both strong, and
Trading offensive presence for defensive presence.
Yeah, and for like a multitude of option too. Like in a sense where now I going from one, and I still have, by the way, I still have Quixodevious at max level, and he's a strong contender with the I think he's like a cheap Kitty. I've heard people say that before, and I think it's actually pretty accurate. -1 speed is not 2, but for the 4 mana cost, that's a pretty significant, like, that's a move in the right direction. And this is, I consider this a buff to me, because every monster has a certain amount of speed, and therefore this might as well just say +1 speed. It's irrelevant whether it's +1 or -1. It's the same movement. And I guess unless your opponent has immunity, which is maybe slightly worse.
No, that gets around immunity because it's a stat minus. It's
Yeah.
not a debuff.
Yeah. So
one thing I did want to say though,
yeah, go
for
ahead.
the Nightshade, that affliction also kind of puts them on the same level as you, because I believe there's only one tank heal that Death has, and that's the Corrupt Pegasus.
Yeah.
So if you don't have Corrupt Pegasus, say we're moving into the modern format, right?
Yeah.
They don't have anything that is tank healing them. So now you're reducing your opponent's ability to heal, but then that is putting them on the same footing as you.
Interesting that you say that. That makes me want to speculate about new legendary summoners. But yeah, no, you're right. There is no other tank. I guess there's some. Is there a neutral tank healer even right now from the
Probably
modern?
isn't Tortoise?
Let's go. Let's have a peek here.
Tortillion or whatever his name is.
Hang on, before we do that, let me just see if there's any other thoughts I wanted to say on this. No, I mean, I guess that's it. Like, I am very tempted at times here, guys. Although I love it, and this is, I even love the card art. I love the coloring. I love dragon. Some of my best cards are dragon. But like I say, this would be this is not as good. Quixotius is not as good. Moments of Nightshade is not as good. Deep Swimmer is not as good. But I could run on, I already have this one, and I would buy those two, and I would have like $1,500 or $2,000 in my pocket left over for free. So it's like, these are where the conversations have to come from if you want to properly explore both what you're doing and where you're aiming, so that you can maximize reward for that.
Yeah.
And I do want to go back, Jim, to talk about, let's do a little speculation, because I was thinking there probably should be some more tank heal on black, either coming in the form of a summoner or maybe in a new monster. So let's talk about that in a minute, but let's check out what the chat's up to.
Also, I did just look into it. There's only one neutral monster with tank heal.
And is it
the Tortesian Chief, whatever his name is?
Is he a modern one or is he an oldie?
No, he's modern. He's an Untamed.
Okay, cool. So I mean, that's something, but most, like, you know how much healing is present for the wild format. It feels a little sparse, doesn't it? I think, yeah, it feels a little sparse.
And I think that's probably even why they made Mimosa. They're like, like you look at how many healers that there were, whether it was tank heal or the tank themselves had heal, versus Death. Like they didn't have a whole lot at all.
That's true, yeah.
So they're like, all right, well, what can we do for them? They could either give them that role of healing, or just like, all right, let's stop everyone else.
See, what's Kitty going for right now? Going for, look at, see, that's a hard pill to swallow right there. This card was selling for $7,000, like but here's the thing. Listen to my words, because it's funny. Like, I was just about to say this card was selling for $7,000, and in a sense, I'm going to talk myself out of selling my kitty. But when you have to actually, when you start speaking to yourself, either to do something or not to do something, you actually have to stop and step back and be like, wait a second, how am I selling myself on this thing? Or how am I like shutting this down for myself? Because, and then critique your own thinking, because I was about to articulate that it used to be worth more, and therefore, how could I possibly sell it now? But here's the thing. It definitely, I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. Maybe it continues to fall in price. Maybe as the new legendary summoners come out, this continues to go down in value. I actually don't know. And the question isn't, will the card go up tomorrow or will it go down tomorrow? The question actually is, would I be satisfied with $3,300? Could I allow myself to be satisfied with $3,300 for this card that I love? And what would $3,300 mean for me if I was able to execute that trade? Because that's the only question that matters. If I sold it for $3,300 and I bought assets that I was super pumped to hold, Who cares if next day it went to 7 grand? Who cares? Because I got different assets. I picked a time. I made my bed. I tried to, maximize my own opportunities. I thought things through as best I could, and maybe I misread the situation, and it would have been better to perhaps wait a day or a week or a month or whatever. But you can't. That's just not how life works. And hindsight is always 2020. So you're just gonna kill yourself. You're gonna beat yourself up doing that kind of thinking. So, I'm gonna think a little bit more on it, because I can't imagine parting with Kitty. But at the same time, I'm kind of leaning towards it too.